You're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship. Brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove. It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Richie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Good evening. Welcome on into Cougar Sports Saturday Special Edition, BYU versus Texas Tech in the Big 12 Championship game. We are live here in Arlington, Texas. Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland with you, talking all things BYU and Texas Tech. A massive stage for these two excellent football teams, number 11 BYU, number 4 Texas Tech. It's a moment, it's an opportunity, Kyle, that Cougar fans have been waiting forever. We were just at the BYU Fan Fest where Elder Bednar and Elder Razban were throwing the football around a little bit. Big opportunity. This Cougar Nation is excited for this game.
Mitch, it was nearly a month ago that we were sitting in Lubbock, Texas after BYU was smashed 29-7 in a game that they were really never in. And now, fast forwarding a few weeks, BYU still has everything in front of them. And as demoralizing as that result was, it was the biggest game up to that point of the season. And now it's the biggest game maybe that BYU has had in 40 years. I think that this game that we will watch tomorrow morning, Mitch, is the second biggest game in BYU football history. I think it only trails the Holiday Bowl in 1984, in which BYU ended up getting a national title after that game. This game is so big because everything is still in front of BYU. If they win tomorrow, they're in the playoff. It's automatic. You don't have to worry about the politicking. You don't have to worry about the playoff selection committee, where they're currently on the outside of the bracket looking in. This is what BYU fans have wanted for decades. They've chased after, they've cherished, they've wanted, they've agonized over the opportunity to have access. The access is available. They just have to go out and take it tomorrow.
And the last time that BYU and Texas Tech met was on November 8th, and BYU lost that game 29-7. But Kalani Sitake noted that Texas Tech players, they were confident that these two teams were going to meet under the stars in Arlington, Texas.
After the game, we're shaking hands. Half of the players were saying, we'll see you guys in a few weeks. They basically respected us enough to know that we're going to get back at this game. And it was really cool that interaction for our guys to go out and play 3 games and get ready to get back into this and have another shot at it. An amazing team. And so we're looking forward to being at our best because it's required of us when playing the best team in the nation, and that's Texas Tech.
And that's high praise. Kalani Sitake believes that Texas Tech is the best team in the country. They're number 4 in the college football playoff, top 25. BYU, number 11. And the Cougars, basically with how the committee has completely disrespected BYU this entire season, they're in a spot, Kyle, where they practically have to win to get into the playoff. And if you win, you get an automatic bid to the playoff by being a conference champion. BYU, if they lose, they're probably not going to get into the playoff, which is unfortunate because an 11-1 football team in a power conference should be an absolute lock of the century to be into the playoff. But for whatever reason, the playoff does not respect BYU, so it's win or basically go home in some respects for BYU when it comes to the playoff.
They haven't respected BYU for decades, Mitch. This sport as a whole has not respected the Cougars. They didn't respect them in the 80s. They didn't respect them in the 90s, 2000s, and so on. BYU's always been on the outside looking in. And I think a lot of this, like you look back to that 84 game that I mentioned earlier, like I wonder how much the sport of college football is just bitter that BYU happened to get a title out of that. They went against the power structure that was at the time. And it feels like they're fighting the same demons, the same energy in 2025, which is insane because BYU has shown each of the last 2 seasons that they're good enough to compete at the P4 level. They're good enough to compete for conference championships. It's just the structure of the sport is against them. And I think that that's going to be a driving force. There's been a lot to be made about the distractions and, the rematch, Kalani Sitake's extension, the Penn State talks. And I know we'll talk about that a lot this hour, but it's just, there's been a lot that's been made of this week, but now we can focus in on these two teams. You've got two top 11 teams. Texas Tech, as Kalani has said already, he thinks they're the best team in the country. I don't know if they're the best team in the country, but they're one of the top 2-3, and they're one of those teams that is talented enough to win a national championship. I do believe that. And BYU, they didn't put out their best showing there in Lubbock a month ago. BYU knows some of the mistakes that they can easily clean up and fix. I'm really just interested to see how they switch up the game plan, especially on the offensive side of things, because Bear Bachmeier, the freshman quarterback, true freshman, he had his worst outing of the season. It was just uncharacteristic from a lot of the performances we've seen from Bear this season. I wonder if they're just going to unleash him a little bit. And what do you have to lose? You have nothing to lose in this game. It's not one of those situations, as you said, where you think that they could possibly get an at-large if they lose this game because they're already on the outside at number 11 looking in. I just believe that BYU, they have a lot of momentum going into this now that Kalani's extension has been taken care of. They have the opportunity to avenge the loss that they had, and they have the chance to win their first conference championship since 2007.
We saw the team last night at their team hotel when they arrived from Provo to Texas, and the team was in good spirits. It's a relatively healthy team. We'll get an update on the injury status at the top of the hour because the Big 12 will release the Friday night availability report as to who's in, who's out, but it's pretty clean bill of health for BYU heading into this game, and that's of note because the last time they played Texas Tech, this was a pretty banged-up ball club going into Lubbock, into a hostile environment where it felt like everything was against BYU. Whereas in this spot, I think it's still going to be probably a pro-Texas Tech crowd considering how many Texas Tech fans are in the Metroplex and going to make the drive from West Texas out here to Arlington. But I also think BYU is going to have a strong showing, too, from their fan base. And I think this team, more importantly, is going to have a strong showing on the field because of guys like L.J. Martin and Bear Bachmeier. They've improved a lot since that loss to Texas Tech. You go back to that setback where they fall 29-7. BYU's reeled off 3 consecutive victories of more than double digits. And that loss to Tech, you could have easily started to question yourself and maybe as a team and wonder, how good are we really? And I feel like they got better. They responded. They didn't let that one setback turn into multiple losses and ultimately keep them out of the Big 12 championship game. So the response was outstanding from this team. I think that's something you can build on. And I think you just come play loose in this game tomorrow. Fast starts have been an issue for this team. And also, the early morning games are always a little bit dicey for BYU. For every Baylor game last year at 10 a.m., body clock game, there's been a handful of examples in the last 3 or 4 years where BYU has not performed well in these morning spots, including the game in Lubbock that was a 10 a.m. body clock. And that was one of the reasons BYU moved up their travel from typically a Friday for a one time zone game to a Thursday because it felt a little rushed for that BYU Texas Tech game back in November. So they got here a day early. Texas Tech arrived in the Metroplex earlier today around noon local time. So this is a massive game, and I'd argue, Kyle, I know it's a weekend with number 1 versus number 2 in the Big Ten with Ohio State and Indiana, but BYU and Texas Tech, this is an electric game that I think is going to be high-level college football, and two teams that I don't know many squads that would want to go up against these teams in a playoff setting. And if BYU can somehow win this game, you'd feel confident going into the playoff that they can compete with anyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun way to start off this championship Saturday. BYU, Texas Tech kicking things off in the morning. The slow start thing is an interesting point there, Mitch, because they also had a slow start last week at home in a morning game against UCF and then ended up just proving that they were clearly the better team over the nights over the course of that game. But BYU's got to look at that even as soon as last week's or as early as last week's performance and also say like, hey, there's a pattern there going back to that game in Lubbock where they have to do things differently in this game on multiple levels. It's not just one thing that needs to be fixed in order to beat this team. That's how good Texas Tech is. You have to fix multiple mistakes that you made in that game. You have to fix multiple habitual things that I think have happened throughout this season to BYU that Texas Tech might take advantage of. BYU has to play their A game. We've said that a bunch this season, and I think the way that they responded, you talk about how like they've responded over these last 3 games, that TCU game right after the Tech lost was their best, most complete performance of the season, in my opinion. The way they responded in that game, that's how they need to respond after the way they started the UCF game last week. They need to come out. They need to start hot. They can't have a first quarter where they're down 7-0, 10-0, 13-0 like they were at halftime against Tech there in Lubbock. Because, lest we forget, like they were down 26-0 at one point in that game, but it was a 13-0 game at halftime. They had just come off of a stop there to end the second quarter, and then BYU had a chance to get some momentum in the third quarter. They went 3-and-out, forced a 3-and-out of the Tech offense, and then they just never got anything going. Fast starts are going to be key to beating Tech, and I think that BYU's got to focus on that tomorrow, especially in the first quarter.
And I think it helped, too, that BYU took a tour of AT&T Stadium today to kind of get the oohs, the ahs out of the way and realize, okay, this is where the play clock is. Get all of that in a row and know where their coordinates are, lay of the land, if you will. And BYU is now ready to go for tomorrow between BYU and Texas Tech. Kickoff at 10 a.m. Pregame begins at 8 here on KSL. And you're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship. And it's brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove. More breakdown next here on KSL.
You're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship, brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove.
Mitch Harper, Kyle Ireland, live from Arlington, Texas, as we get ready for Big 12 Championship Saturday, as the number 11 BYU Cougars are getting ready to face top 4 team in the country, Mitch. The Texas Tech Red Raiders. They put on a show against BYU a month ago there in Lubbock, and BYU is looking to avenge that loss. Texas Tech is a dang good football team, Mitch. They're one of the most complete teams in the country. They put that on display there in that game on the road where BYU really just – it was the one game this season, Mitch, where BYU never felt like they were in the game. They've had multiple double-digit deficits, including last week, including on the road at other places this season. But it was just one where they were down and out pretty much the entire time. They had no momentum ever. There was no rhythm to that game. I really just am interested to see what they can do to try and maybe have some fire in this game, have some momentum, have some drives that are stacked together, because Texas Tech is one of those teams that maybe, like they had 5 field goals in that game. BYU's defense did a lot to keep them out of the end zone, but they slowly chipped away at BYU. And I think that's one of the things that is lacking for BYU when you come to like the college football playoff committee's view of BYU. BYU is not one of those glamorous, flashy teams that's just beating teams by, 30, 40 points if they're a bad team, or by 3 touchdowns if they're a good team, even like Texas Tech did to BYU. Because I do think BYU is a good football team, but these wins, 11 wins, and they're not getting any respect. It's just hard to believe in today's day and age that you're a power conference team that is playing for a conference championship and you're still on the outside.
One individual who does respect BYU is Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. Obviously, he's going to respect the programs in his league. At times, I think he's kind of not done enough to –
a little too late.
Yeah, it feels like he hasn't done it. He hasn't been proactive enough to bang the drum of BYU's story, because it wasn't – I wish Kalani would have been a little more aggressive earlier. I thought the moment in the schedule where BYU needed to go on full-blown attack was after the TCU game, where they win that game. Oklahoma beats Alabama. That was the moment where BYU needed to put the campaign on. Kalani hits the podium after that TCU win and basically says, hey, we're better than these 2 lost teams. This, and this, and this. Big 12 should have done that too. They didn't. It's been too reactionary. Yeah, it's like all fun song and dance for people around national media, a few of them, to say, yeah, BYU deserves to be in now. Well, it's too little too late. Where were you 3 weeks ago? Where were the campaigns earlier when BYU was going through this schedule, taking care of business, and the only team they lose to was number 4 Texas Tech? And I get it. Win and you're in. I understand that. But when you're in a power league, you should have some margin for error, because this is the same song and dance BYU went through when they were in the WAC and the Mountain West Conference, and even to a lesser degree independent. Still, Brett Yormark wants to see BYU in the playoff and feels that they should. He laid out the resumes of both Texas Tech and BYU heading into this Big 12 championship game.
Both programs are not only worthy of competing in the Big 12 title, but they both deserve to be in the CFP based on their resumes and their bodies of work. Texas Tech's terrific season has them firmly in the CFP, no doubt. They are a shoo-in, and I said that last Friday. BYU's body of work at 11-1 is being undervalued by the CFP committee at number 11 in rankings. Let's not look at logos. Let's look at resumes. Any blind resume comparison has BYU in the top 10. No question about it. In comparison with Notre Dame, as an example, BYU has a better overall record, better strength of record, and better strength of schedule. I am confident that the CFP will get it right for BYU.
Are you confident, Mitch?
Isn't it funny how Yormark said it that way? I'm confident the committee will do right by BYU. He's basically indirectly saying he doesn't think BYU is going to win tomorrow. And he's now saying it's going to be in the hands of the committee. Hey, why not believe BYU can actually win this game, folks? Like, I understand BYU's a big dog in this one, but
it's also like the 13th data point. If that's being held against BYU, it wasn't held against SMU last year. It wasn't held against TCU when they were in the Big 12 championship game a few years ago.
It's a total joke that Notre Dame can just sit on their hands and they lose to their 2 best opponents on their schedule. They lose those games. They don't play a 13th game. They're not in a conference, but because they have a gold dome that they had 4 horsemen back in the 1920s, that still carries today. Because BYU is still relatively young in terms of significance in college football. It's kind of a little bit of a microwave dynasty, even though now it's went a half a century of success for a long period of time at a high level of winning, yet it never matters because that stretch Y apparently doesn't carry enough weight and enough dollars for this college football playoff committee. I wish the committee would just come out and say, we don't think you're any good. We don't think your league's good. I would respect that a lot more than saying, oh, yeah, we respect BYU. However, Notre Dame did this. They did that. Notre Dame had a movie called Rudy. It's like, give me a break, committee. They're terrible. Brett Yormark, again, multiple Big 12 teams he believes deserve to be in this college football playoff.
Well, listen, I'm a pretty outspoken commissioner. I feel very strongly about Texas Tech and BYU, and then I also think that Utah deserves consideration, strong consideration. I said that on Friday night when I was at the ASU-Arizona game on Fox, and I'll continue to beat that drum because I strongly believe in it. And hopefully, the CFP gets it right, and I have a lot of confidence in them.
So we'll see how it goes. I think Yormark's being a little bit optimistic, but I do think, again, it was a little too late at times from the Big 12 in pushing out, the combating the narratives in the college football playoff. BYU social media team has even had these sarcastic tones on X and social media, but at the same time, do it when the discussion's actually relevant because nothing's going to change. Alabama is in front of BYU. They're not going to go below the Cougars, even if the only way that they go below BYU potentially is if they lose by 40.
Yeah.
They have to get absolutely dominated against Georgia in the SEC title. For Notre Dame, they're not moving. They don't want Notre Dame to be outside the playoff unless BYU wins.
The committee doesn't, ESPN doesn't. There's multiple factors.
And that's a great point, too. The ESPN side of it, too, the presentation of the broadcast. When they size up resumes on the telecast, they don't even show BYU.
Yeah, the lack of presentation.
They just basically say, well, you've got a chance to get in if you beat Texas Tech. What other team is required to – you have to beat a top 4 team in order to get in. I understand eventually when you get to the playoff, you have to do that at some point, probably beat a top 4 team to go win it all. But, for that to be mandated – to me, I feel like if BYU is within at least 1 score, even if they lose, to me they should move up because it takes away this narrative that they got absolutely dominated by one of the elite teams. because then that's countering to that performance in Lubbock on a neutral field, which is where basically all the playoff games outside of the first round will be played. And you're showing that you are an excellent football team that could go toe-to-toe with one of the great teams in the sport this year.
Yeah, I just think that at this point, Mitch, all of these arguments are, left for dead pretty much.
Just
because
go win.
BYU has to just win this football game.
Yeah.
Like, it's not worth politicking about. That, like you said, that should have been done after the TCU game. And it's unfortunate that BYU is in the position that they are in, and it's not to any fault of their own other than maybe they just weren't outspoken enough.
It's just brand biases.
Yes, they need to let the play on the field speak tomorrow, and hopefully that's enough if they don't lose or if they don't win the game. If it's a close game, hopefully that's enough. But I hated the arguments that we were getting from like the text thread a few weeks ago, where it's like if you just win, you're in. It's like, yes, obviously if you win, you're in, but they shouldn't be in a position where that's their only option.
They're treating BYU like a group of 5 team.
Absolutely.
When you're in the Big 12, you should be reviewed on equal footing like the SEC and the Big 10. Now, you can come out and say as the committee, we think the SEC and the Big 10 is clearly better.
There might be 2 G5 teams that get in over BYU.
And I'm okay with the group of 5 teams being in because those leagues need to have an opportunity and a path to have meaningful football games. In fact, we're watching Jake Retzlaff, former BYU quarterback, in action right now against North Texas. So Tulane's up 17-7 right now. And Tulane's knocking on the door of getting to the playoff. And Jake Retzlaff could be playing in if BYU beats Texas Tech. Hold on, let's just dream this scenario before we get to a break. BYU beats Texas Tech. Let's say they get to the 6th seed. They host a game. Tulane gets the 11th seed. James Madison gets the 12th seed because 7-5 Duke wins the ACC. Jake Retzlaff to Provo, BYU versus Tulane first round. What say you?
Crazier things have happened in this sport. I don't think that's likely.
Neither do I.
I'm here for it.
I would love to see it. Let's take a break. It's a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. Big 12 Championship Game Edition, live from Arlington right here on KSL News Radio.
You're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship. Brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove. It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Ritchie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
We're live on this Friday night, getting you ready for BYU versus Texas Tech. Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland coming to you from Arlington, Texas, site of the Big 12 Championship game. Kickoff tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pregame begins at 8 here on the legacy home of the Cougars. And a big storyline heading into this game is 2 coaches that got long-term contract extensions. And for Cougar fans, they are thrilled. Their guy, Kalani Sitake, turns down the overtures from Blue Blood Penn State. And he's locked in to be the head man at BYU. It was a hectic beginning to this week, Kyle. I mean, you and I were texting a ton about this. I mean, talking to people around the program, talking to everyone was holding their breath, collective breath, at the idea of their guy, Kalani, leaving for Penn State. But Kalani, he makes the right move. He stays. And BYU, though, made the right move by investing in Kalani. Huge week for the Cougars.
It's been one of those things, Mitch, where Kalani's been reached out to by programs over the years. I mean, he's been at BYU for 10 seasons now. This is not the first time that he's been sought after, and it won't be the last time either. Like, it's going to happen as long as BYU continues to have success in the Sitake era. But, Mitch, this one was real. One was real, and there was a chance they were going to lose him to Penn State. And Penn State's a good job. Like, that's not a job that a lot of, coaches in the country wouldn't take,
And the resources that he was reportedly going to get, maybe north of $10 million. There was some high numbers thrown out there reportedly. It was a lot to turn down.
A lot to turn down, but at the end of the day, I was optimistic throughout this process because of a few things. Kalani loves BYU, and BYU in turn loves Kalani. They love what he stands for. He's a good family man. He stands for the right things. He does things the right way, and as Brian Santiago said on Tuesday during that press conference, he does things the BYU way. And the church loves that. BYU loves that. And I think Kalani also loves it too. He loves the fact that he's at his alma mater. He loves the fact that he can win at his alma mater. But he just wants to be able to have the resources to do so at the highest level. And as much as, Kalani's salary was a talking point in the national media as well this week, Kalani wanted to take care of those around him. He wanted to take care of his assistants, the support staff. He also wanted to take care of his players. The future players, the guys that signed this week, guys that are going to be the future of this BYU program years to come. And I think that is the biggest thing, Mitch, is that there's going to be facilities that are being, taken care of. The people, the personnel, those things are going to be taken care of. And Kalani said on Tuesday night, he's not talking about, having extravagant facilities. He doesn't want guys that are coming to BYU because of how a building looks, how, locker rooms are or whatnot around the country, all the glitz and glam that can come with big-time college football. But he wants guys that play tough football that are here for the right reasons. I just think that it's nice that BYU has shown Kalani the investment in all of those things, but in turn they've also shown the investment in Kalani and his coaching style and his vision for this program as well.
Here was Kalani on those goals of this process that ultimately led him to signing a long-term extension with his alma mater.
Goal here was for me not only to be here for a long time, but also to take care of my coaching staff and my support staff. And this allows us to do that. Also to take care of our players. So there's a strong commitment from the university to do those things, and that speaks to my heart.
I think that's a cool thing because it speaks to Kalani's heart, but he's not like an overly emotional guy, Mitch. He's not one of those guys that's like super stoic either. He's kind of like an in-between. But Kalani was super emotional during that press conference where he talked about his family. That was the first time that he got choked up. And then the second time was when he talked about Cougar Nation. Those are the things that that Kalani cares about. And I think that the one thing that was fun this week, Kalani talked about the support and his family's reaction, and this is what he had to say about how Cougar Nation treated him this week.
Finally, I just want to express my love to all the fans. My wife said that the last day or so was probably one of her favorites, and my family, and she called it a love bomb from all the fans. And yeah, it's hard to leave when you have something so special, and you have amazing people that support us.
It was pretty special to see the response from Cougar Nation on social media, which was, in some respects, spearheaded by the Crumble CEO, Jason McGowan, who has just made an absolute name for his company. If they didn't need it already.
Great marketing campaign.
Crumble is well known already nationwide, but they've only become even a bigger fan favorite for Cougar fans. Even Barstool Sports' Dave Portnoy, a.k.a. Provo Dave, doing a review on the Crumble cookie today, and he's like, $5.50 for this cookie. Now I know why we got Kalani, boys. It's like,
did you see the rating, though?
9.8.
That's a great cookie right there.
9.8 out of 10. I don't know if I'd give the chocolate chip a 9.8. That's to me is a solid 7, that Crumble cookie. Now
that beat out the bookstore rating.
Yeah, that was quite impressive. Safe to say, though, Cougar Nation means a lot to Kalani Sitake. Yeah. In a world where college football coaches are so paranoid, they're so almost frightened to like interact with fan bases, Kalani is one of you, one of Cougar Nation. He understands you. You know, it's interesting. Kalani Sitake, I remember one of my first conversations with him here in the media, and I've covered every step of Kalani's time at BYU. And I remember him just talking about how he told me, I want you to be fair as a media member. Like, do what you want to do. Don't be, because this notion that the media is just out to do things to just get access and just be almost like, almost just like sugarcoating everything. Yeah, there's people that probably do that. There's others that go on another extreme, but just be fair and balanced. I think these coaches respect that. Yeah. And the thing is like, and I bring this up because Kalani Sitake wants the same thing like Cougar Nation. He wants just the truth to come out. He wants, because when you're mad as a fan about the offensive play calling, he's probably even more mad. Like, that's what makes Kalani so special with this program.
How often has he talked about that, Mitch, where he says, I was a fan before I was a coach?
And I say that because Kalani understands Cougar Nation. When coaches go to these programs, Matt Campbell's going to go to Penn State. He's going to be a great coach there. I think he's going to do a fantastic job. He's probably a better fit than Kalani at Penn State, to be honest.
It's a great fit.
But I think that, Kalani is someone that he just understands his fan base. And when you pair up the passion of this fan base with a man that respects it deeply, and then the uniqueness of this program, the winning tradition on the field, it's an incredible dynamic. And there's no one better to lead this program than Kalani Sitake. And I'm so glad for Cougar Nation that Kalani locked in, got the extension, and BYU understood the moment and said, you know what? It's time to step it up and pay this guy like he's one of the best coaches, not only in the Big 12, but in college football. Kalani's had a lot of ups and downs. It has not always been smooth sailing. But what he's done since BYU pretty much got into the Big 12, this is one of the winningest programs in college football, and they're the winningest program in the 16-team Big 12. Kalani Sitake locked in for a long-term extension. Bright days ahead for Cougar football. And Cougar fans hope those bright days get rolling tomorrow against Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game. And you're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. It's Friday, baby. BYU in the Big 12 championship, and it's brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove.
You're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship. Brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove.
That's right, Cougar Sports Saturday live on a Friday as we prep things for the Big 12 Championship game tomorrow. Kyle Ireland and Mitch Harper live from Arlington, Texas, just outside of AT&T Stadium, where tomorrow morning it's going to be a big game, Mitch, and this week was full of a lot of BYU-centric news. Despite them not being in the playoff picture right now, they were talked about because of that. And then the Kalani Sitake news, I don't know, maybe it was just like an awesome ploy by Kalani to hold this thing out a little bit so that way BYU got some media coverage.
Well, it was kind of tough on Monday, the Big 12 press conference for this championship game. Typically it's like celebratory. You think back to last year with Kenny Dillingham and Matt Campbell, Iowa State, Arizona State. It was just feel good of, I can't wait to go up against this guy.
Let's talk about the game.
Can't wait to do this.
X's and O's.
Then you got people like me. Care to comment? And then he's getting questioned about his pay. How do you feel about your relationship with Brian Santiago? Oh, buddy. So what I'm saying here, was this just a massive distraction for this team? Did they lose a day or two? Because, look, when there's uneasiness about a coaching, man, that can be very unsettling because nowadays players have agents, and then agents are going to start making calls at the moment there's uneasiness. They're going to try to find their client, the players, a new landing spot if someone does leave. Hey, is A-Rod going to take you to Penn State? If A-Rod goes to Penn State with Kalani, what's Jay Hill going to do? It just creates all this uneasiness. So what say you? Do you think that was a huge distraction that's going to put this BYU team behind the curve a little bit against this talented Tech squad?
There was also signing day this week, Mitch. It was the present of the program and the future of the program were at stake. I think that there was a distraction there, at least through Tuesday. There had to have been. There couldn't have not been because you mentioned the assistant coaches. They're also having to make contingency plans as well. And I think that, from the athletic department standpoint to Kalani, to the coaches, to the players, everybody, if you're doing the right thing, you are having a backup plan. It's the smart way to go about it. But at the same time, the paramount thing this week was tomorrow's game.
Yes.
And so being able to have that focus, I just hope that they were able to make the transition from the celebration there after practice on Tuesday night before the press conference where everybody was clearly happy on the team that Kalani had made the decision to stay. And I hope that elevates them above the distractions and the time that may have been missed on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday going into that press conference. I think hopefully for this BYU team, we see where they were able to come above that, and then they can use that as an emotional boom to like really just kind of launch themselves into a game where you mentioned earlier in the show, Mitch, we were at the team hotel last night watching the team come into the lobby. Those guys seemed fired up. The vibes were good. There were lots of smiles on the coaches' faces. Kalani was happy. He's glad that this is behind him, that they can focus on the football game. And I know that, for BYU fans, they were probably frustrated as well this week, not knowing what the future looked like. I think that's normal and natural for everybody in this. But I think that the vibes from Tuesday on have been good, and they've been in the right places. Just do they outweigh what happened before that?
And you just wonder, too, if those great vibes, that momentum from the head coach, turning down a blue blood to sign on long-term with BYU is enough to make you competitive against one of the best teams in college football. I mean, you look at Texas Tech. Texas Tech is only the sixth team in the past, hold your breath for this, in the past 100 years, since 1925, to win at least 11 regular season games by at least 20 points. Texas Tech dominates teams. They joined Nebraska in 1971, Florida in 2008, Florida State in 2013, Alabama 2018, and Ohio State 2019. Texas Tech is beating teams by an average of 35.2 points per game. That's better than Indiana, who's at number 2, beating their opponents by 33.4. So, again, Texas Tech's logo doesn't register much long-term history of BYU's got a better brand
they haven't done
of winning
anything
for a long period of time. But the here and now, Texas Tech is an absolute new blood in college football. And if you can take these guys down, it would be a massive win. It would be an all-time win in BYU football history. I think BYU's quarterback, Bear Bachmeier, has to be able to get the ball off quick and turn to those receivers that have been so good with yards after the catch. Parker Kingston's got to make some basic 5-yard curl route, turn that into a 50-yarder. Things like that have got to happen for BYU if they're going to win this game. And not drop the ball. JoJo Phillips had a bad game in Lubbock. You can't drop the football. You've got to help Bear, but they've got to have some quick routes because the max protection stuff that happened in Lubbock, it's not going to get it done. It's just not going to work, just being so fearful of Texas Tech. And that's another thing, too. I thought last month BYU was afraid of Texas Tech. Even Aaron Roddick was saying this is the best defense we've faced since Texas in 2023, and absolutely it is. This is a fantastic defense. I think it's maybe the best BYU's faced in the Kalani Sitake era, but you can't be scared. I thought they came out scared in Lubbock. And you just hope that this momentum, again, circling it back to the extension, makes them just feel confident. Play loose. If you lose by 14, yes, Cougar Nation's going to be sad about missing the playoff, and it'd be a bummer. But the nation's not going to care. They're just going to be like, oh, yeah, BYU's a fraud, just like we thought. Just go out and play loose. Just go out there with an edge about you, because I thought the defense had that edge in Lubbock. The offense and the special teams were no-shows last time they faced Tech.
That was the disappointing thing, Mitch, they probably would have lost that game regardless of those mistakes. But
yeah,
just to play a clean game of football, I think at the end of the day, most people, including the fan base, the coaches, the players, like everybody, if you put out your best performance and you still lose, like, you can go home and just like kind of respect the opponent.
Agreed.
I think everybody would have come out of there and been like, in the same way that Texas Tech and those players, and Kalani mentioned it, was, hey, like, we're going to see you guys in a few weeks. I think BYU could have left that game and felt the exact same way, like, hey, you guys had us today, but we're going to see you in a few weeks. But it was just such a demoralizing performance that I was kind of worried going into that TCU game that they wouldn't show up. And luckily they kind of used that week to swap a lot of things out and, really put their best as far as 60 minutes is concerned out on the field this season. I just think that, that stat you brought up about Texas Tech, I do wonder, Mitch, how much of the lack of respect from the CFP kind of goes into this, where it's like the sport is evolving. BYU and Texas Tech are becoming, maybe there's a changing of the guard where these guys are going to be at the top of the Big 12 because they're investing in the right way. Oklahoma State a couple of years ago when BYU was the first year new guy in the conference, it was like, hey, Oklahoma State's going to be really good for a long time. Mike Gundy isn't there anymore. Oklahoma State's terrible. Like,
they haven't won
times
a conference game in 2 years.
Very quickly. Yes, and BYU and Texas Tech have shown that, hey, if you adapt to this sport, you can quickly become successful. I think that stat alone right there shows how good this Red Raider team is. Those are national champions.
Well, and what's also frustrating too is you can even argue that Texas Tech's being disrespected a little bit too because they're that dominant and they're still only fourth. Again, this committee has no respect for the Big 12. Just moments ago, even on ESPN, they're in a halftime break of the Tulane game and in the American Conference, and they got a little tease for Saturday questions. Who are the people that they're asking questions about? They show highlights of Notre Dame. They show highlights of Miami. Why are we showing those teams? They're not even playing this weekend. Again, it's just this sport is frustrating, but it's also a sport that we all love. We can't get enough of it. It's this double-edged sword, and that's why, again, BYU, don't worry about the distractions. Don't worry about the noise, and just lock into really, it sounds so cliche, and Kalani brings it up a lot, do the 111th, man, because you got to do the 111th, and maybe not even that. You got to dominate your 111th against this team. And if BYU can dominate their 111th consistently enough with the personnel that they have, they can be not only competitive with Texas Tech, they can absolutely upset this team. I do feel confident BYU is going to show a lot better this time around against the Red Raiders, but even playing your best football might still not be good enough because Texas Tech is really balanced with their offense is number one in the Big 12. Their defense is also number one in the Big 12.
In the Big 12 either.
It's quite the matchup, and I'm curious to see how it all plays out tomorrow between BYU and Texas Tech. Kickoff again, 10 a.m. right here on KSL News Radio. Pregame will begin at 8 a.m. from AT&T Stadium right here on the legacy home of the Cougars, and also the KSL News Radio app and the KSL Sports app. So many different ways to listen to BYU versus Texas Tech tomorrow on game day, and you can watch the game too on ABC. We will be back hour number 2 with an injury report update and also more news and notes and stat breakdowns of BYU and Tech here on KSL.
You're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship. Brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove. It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Richie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Hour number 2 here of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. We're live in Arlington, Texas. Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland with you, talking BYU and Texas Tech. You know, it's crazy, Kyle, when you think about BYU football and the history of this program. It's a storied program with so many iconic moments, big games. But this is an opportunity and a stage that Cougar fans have been dreaming of for so many years. They probably thought this would only be played out in video games on NCAA football 2004 back in the day, playing in Big 12 championship games. That day is here tomorrow. It's the first conference championship game BYU has played in since 1998, but there's kind of a catch to that because it's only the third year since 1998 that there's been a championship game on the line in BYU's respective leagues. So, but it's a huge opportunity for BYU, and I cannot wait to see how this team comes out and performs in such a big stage like tomorrow.
I think the one thing that I've heard from the fan base and, you know, guys and girls that are here that have made the trip to Arlington, whether it's, you know, families that have made the trip or a bunch of buddies or whatnot, you know, a lot of Cougar Nation is here, and we talked to them at the Fan Fest tonight, and there was excitement, but also the angst because they know what happened the last time these two teams met up. But I think that Mitch, in a lot of ways, the defense did show up, I think, to that game, but it wasn't their best performance either. But the offense and special teams were no-shows. There were just too many mistakes there as well, and just no rhythm. I think that that's going to be a learning experience for those phases of the football team. But the defense as well, like, they're healthier. They're better as well. I think Keanu Tanavasa has had a better 3-game stretch since that than any point this season. Jack Kelly is healthier. Isaiah Glasker is healthier. These DBs, I mean, I think that they didn't have their best performance against Baron Morton in that game. That I wasn't that impressed by him as well. I just think that Texas Tech was able to really take advantage of BYU in that game when BYU let them kind of take advantage of them. I think that if BYU can come out, start strong, even had they gotten a field goal on their first drive, that's just some little momentum. You don't have to go out and, have a touchdown your opening drive, but that would be nice, just to be able to have a quick start. When BYU scores first, like, they are more often than not winning that football game in the Kalani Sitake era. And so I think that there's been a lot to be made of LJ Martin's performance in that game and just the way that he was a no-show. He was a non-factor in that game, and he was obviously dealing with an injury, but LJ since then has had some really nice performances, including a career-best performance that you saw live in Cincinnati there, Mitch, where he really popped off against the Bearcats. And if he can be a semblance of that against the Red Raiders tomorrow morning, I mean, he won Offensive Player of the Year in the Big 12 for a reason. Kalani Sitake won Big 12 Coach of the Year for a reason. This is a good football team. They just need to show it.
Yeah, let's go over those season awards for BYU. Well represented in Big 12 football, end-of-season awards. Kalani, as you noted, the Chuck Nenis Big 12 Coach of the Year. I was kind of surprised that he got it. Well. I thought Joey McGuire for sure would get it. I think there was a great argument to give Joey McGuire the Coach of the Year because even though they paid a lot for that roster, you still got to go coach it. You still got to bring everyone together.
I mean, he would have been on the hot seat had they not had the season that they've had.
Well, I think what's impressive to me about Texas Tech is it's a roster that has a lot of transfers, yet they seem very unified. Mm-hmm. They seem like they really like each other. And that's pretty impressive. They have a very unique strategy about how they go about constructing rosters. They've got a general manager who Joey McGuire is got a long-standing history with, and he gives him basically full autonomy over the roster. And how they built this roster for Texas Tech, you go through and it's like guys at Louisiana Lafayette, but they were the first team all Sun Belt. It was very strategic. It wasn't just power conference guys. It was under the radar FCS, group of 5 players, all conference guys, but great fits, guys that wanted to level up, and they've really kind of come together. So I thought there was a great argument for Joey McGuire, but I love that Kalani got it because what's special about Kalani, fresh off the extension, is he really, in many respects, is following the path of Lavelle Edwards. I said it on Cougar Tracks earlier this week, and I don't say this lightly. As someone who has a deep-rooted passion and for the history of BYU football, I don't say this lightly, so let me preface that. But Kalani has the potential to be the best coach in BYU football history. He really does. Absolutely. Because of the paths that he has in the sport to offer him, the way that he's winning, how he's universally respected by the entire industry. The coaches vote on these awards in the Big 12, and it's almost like a tip of the cap to we absolutely respect the heck out of that man because he does more, at least up until this point, with less. Now going forward, hopefully that narrative changes and it's living up and doing a heck of a lot with a lot of resources that's contending with Texas Tech every single year. So seeing Kalani Coach of the Year was awesome. LJ Martin, Offensive Player of the Year, well-deserved for LJ.
Yeah, LJ's been outstanding, Mitch. I mean, how often have we talked about it on Cougar Sports Saturday that this BYU team will go the way that the running game and LJ Martin goes and has taken them. And LJ, he struggled in that game, and I don't blame him to some degree because he was hurt and he'd only had that bye week right before then to come off that injury. And there was a lot of discussion like, how long is this going to keep LJ hampered and injured and out?
And he even said himself after the TCU game, he was lacked confidence in that shoulder.
And it seems like the confidence is back because LJ has been outstanding. We've talked about this off the air, Mitch, but LJ is going to go down, and I think that he's gone. I think this is one of the last games that we're going to see LJ Martin in the BYU uniform.
He went through senior day.
He did the senior walk. He got the senior blanket, and it was nice that he had that moment of recognition, because at the end of this, I think BYU fans are going to look back one day and say, LJ Martin was a top 5 running back in BYU history. I think that he is that good. LJ Martin is outstanding. I think he's going to be outstanding at the next level as well. NFL scouts have had a lot of time to watch him this season, and there's a reason why the coaching staff told him, as you asked in the press conference last Saturday after the UCF game, where he was getting that, and it was the coaches that were telling him, hey, you need to take advantage of this because it might be your last home game. And that just speaks to how LJ's played this season. He's been spectacular.
LJ's running mate in the backfield, offensive backfield, Bear Bachmeier, the Bear Dynasty. We saw those T-shirts being sold at the Fan Fest along with some Big 12 championship shirts. But Bear Bachmeier named Big 12 Offensive Freshman of the Year. No surprise there. I mean, he won the Freshman of the Week honor in the league 7 different occasions. He honestly should be the National Freshman of the Year.
Not even a finalist.
In college football. Yeah, not even a finalist for the Sean Alexander True Freshman of the Year award in college football. You think about where this thing has evolved from the guy that we're watching on the TV right now, Jake Retzlaff, who I keep bringing up. It's just kind of funny to see. Not funny, but it's just bizarre to see. You know, we talked to Jake. I did at the end of spring ball, and he was talking about the Heisman and this and that, and then a couple of months later, he's gone. And then what do you do at quarterback? Well, this freshman who rolled in from Stanford arrives in June, and there were times in fall camp where it was not always pretty with Bear. I think we often kind of gloss over that. I think fans that didn't get the chance to watch practices at all, and I understand they don't get to see that, but it was a mixed bag. It wasn't always flawless. And you're just thinking, man, this is kind of up and down. But he has been so good. Only 4 interceptions this year. And we were talking about this off the air, getting in show prep. But you think back to that game in week 1. Portland State, 69-0 right out of the gates. And you looked at it and say, it's the opponent. But it told us a lot in that moment because this guy was for real to help lead an offense to score 69 points. I don't care who the opponent is. You got a proof of concept right out of the chute that this guy was going to be ready. He was going to be prepared. He's going to be a gamer. And he's done that every single week. And Kyle, last week he goes for 84% completion rate. He's only getting better. The future is incredibly bright with Bear Bachmeier, whatever happens tomorrow.
Yeah, he just needs to have a better performance than he did last time they played because it was his worst game of the season. And I think that
against Tech.
Yeah, against Texas Tech a month ago in Lubbock there on November 8th. I just think that I look back to that interception that he threw in particular, Mitch, and it was the really the brightest, I'm a true freshman moment of the season for Bear Bachmeier. He's made good decisions since then, and we're going to continue to look forward throughout the rest of this hour as we preview tomorrow's big game between Bear Bachmeier and BYU against Texas Tech. You're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU tomorrow in the Big 12 Championship game, brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove.
You're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship, brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove.
Welcome back into Cougar Sports Saturday, a special edition on a Friday night as we get you ready for BYU versus Texas Tech tomorrow. And KSL News Time is 8:21 p.m. on this Friday, December 5th. And just about 20 minutes ago, the Big 12 released the Friday night availability report for BYU versus Texas Tech. And as we noted, Kyle, BYU is very healthy going into this game. There is only one player listed on this availability report for BYU. That is tight end Kean Need, and he is probable. He was earlier this week questionable. Now he's been upgraded to probable. So BYU goes into the biggest game of the year and one of the biggest games of this century. Very healthy. Chase Roberts is going to be back. They're going to have Sione Moa is expected to play. He's the backup running back. to LJ Martin. He hasn't played since September 20th against East Carolina. That's exciting for BYU to be healthy going into this game.
It's amazing, Mitch, because it's going to be the opposite of how it was the last time these two teams met. BYU was a very banged-up team. We talked about this after the first month of the season, that BYU was going to go into a 6-7 game stretch that was going to prove how good this football team was. And now looking back at it, they came out really well in that game. Obviously, they're an 11-1 football team, right? But Texas Tech, that game, after a bye week, it was just a tough matchup based off of how they came out of that Iowa State game. They were banged up, and it's nice to see this team healthy. Max Alford was another guy that was on the report earlier this week as well.
And that's someone we're going to have to get some clarification on because he's been out since the TCU game. Was it a case where now he's been ruled? We'll figure out what the status on him, because sometimes with players that are out, and if they get ruled out as season ending, then they don't have to be reported on the sheet. So we'll have to get clarification on that from BYU personnel on the status of Max Alford, because earlier in the week he was listed as out. But I just think it's a good spot BYU's in health-wise. On the flip side, Texas Tech, their star quarterback Baron Morton, he's dealt with an injury since October 11th, but this week was the first since October that he practiced without a boot on, because remember in that BYU Texas Tech game, he was banged up
and he had a hard time walking in the second half.
BYU was all over him to the tune of 4 sacks. He's listed as probable, and then their star outside linebacker David Bailey reportedly dealing with an arm injury that kept him out of the second half last week against West Virginia. Coach Joey McGuire said it was precautionary, but David Bailey and Baron Morton probable, expected to play. But both these teams, for the most part, really healthy going into this one. And that's significant, because if you're going to make it to the playoff, you have to be – it's almost like a war of attrition. Can you stay healthy heading into this long stretch? Because if you do get into the playoffs, and BYU would like to make a run in the playoffs, you have to win 4 games. If you start in the first round, you still got another month and a half of the season, potentially, if you go the distance. So you've got to keep your players healthy heading into these games. And Joey McGuire, head coach for the Texas Tech Raiders, he is very complimentary about BYU, and he even notes that both these teams that are going to square off tomorrow, they should be in the CFP.
I think that without a doubt, we both should be in the playoffs. No matter what happens on Saturday, I think we've earned the right. And I think whenever you look at it, they're discounting both of us whenever you're talking about where we're ranked.
I think that this game, Mitch, for the playoff, obviously, BYU, if they win, they're in. And Texas Tech is already in. And like Yormark said, they're a shoe. And I believe that. I think that where they're sitting right now, I just have a hard time believing that they would fall out. But this committee is not rational, in my opinion.
Trust them, man.
And so it wouldn't completely shock me if Texas Tech were to lose, if they fell out of this thing. But I will say that it's not just the fact that these teams are playing for a trophy, rings, the conference championship. Texas Tech is also playing for the chance to get a bye. There's a lot on the line for the Red Raiders. If they get a bye, that means something, to be able to rest and have these guys on their injury report have another week to heal up for what would be a playoff game for them for the first time in their history. And, they haven't won a conference championship game in a very, very long time. And
they've never played in a conference championship game.
Won a conference championship outright, though, since the 1950s. And so it's just been a long time for either of these teams. These programs are starving for this moment, and they're hyped. They're ready to go. We were in Lubbock a month ago, and we saw what that fan base did for that game. I mean, Game Day was there for that game, and they were ready days before the game. The students were hyped. The fan base was hyped. It meant a lot to them, and I think that they're going to show out well tomorrow. The Red Raiders are going to have a good crowd here, but I think BYU fans are going to match it to the best of their ability as well. I think it's going to be a fun atmosphere, and there's going to be – you mentioned it earlier in the show. This is what this fan base, Cougar Nation, has been wanting for decades, and I think that they're going to make an effort to be out here at this game. I mean, tickets are expensive, flights are expensive, hotels are expensive, but these are the kinds of games that don't come around very often. And Mitch, like I said to open the show today, I really do believe that this is the second biggest game in BYU football history.
Dang, that's bold remarks, but it is a massive setting for BYU and Texas Tech tomorrow in the Big 12 championship game, and we're devouring a Cougar Tail in between commercial breaks. We were at Globe Life Field and enjoying some sweet, sugary sustenance, in the words of Provo Dave. That's what we do. We eat sugar, we pay for overpriced cookies, and we help the cause of BYU football. It was so cool to see all the BYU fans at Globe Life Field just wanting to be there and get ready for this big
They
opportunity.
sold that thing out, Mitch.
It was awesome. I think the Texas Tech fans, have been pretty classy too throughout this week as well. Even one of the elevator people at Globe Life Field, Georgia, who's a Lubbock native, kind lady, fantastic lady, heart of gold in the elevator. She said, wreck 'em, go Red Raiders. But I'm like, you know what? Okay, you're a sweet lady, but I think hopefully the Cougs get it done and make you sad for at least a day. Hopefully then the next day, you're happy because you're going to the playoffs. But it's just a big game, and I love that BYU gets a chance to be in this one. But I do want to see BYU play a complete game for 60 minutes. And still, a complete game from BYU could be enough where they still come up short potentially, because Texas Tech, if they play a complete game, that would be tough to beat. But I just think there's moments even defensively for BYU in that game a month ago. Those deep shots to the corner that Texas Tech just consistently was hitting downfield. Can BYU stop those? Can BYU contain Texas Tech's running backs, who were really having a lot of success and couldn't be stopped? Will BYU's run defense be stout in this game? Will the special teams not have any miscues to where they're basically botching punts off the side of the punter's foot? Sam Vanderhaar, no muff punts. Just play to the best of your abilities. And I think all you can ask for is, at the end of the day, BYU will be in the mix in the fourth quarter. It's tough to score on Texas Tech. They've only given up 100 points in Big 12 play this season. Fewest points allowed since 2009 Nebraska. But if there's a team that's going to be able to do it, it's BYU.
Yeah, BYU, they have to lay it all on the line in this game, Mitch. And I know that's just, cliche, and it's easy to say that they have to go out and play their best performance. But it's nice to see that a lot of the things that have happened this last week, the distractions that could have been there, they're all put to bed. Kalani's here for the long term. These players are healthy. A lot of things are trending in the right direction for tomorrow morning for this BYU football team. And I think that the one thing for me, Mitch, to add to your, 60 minutes of football, BYU has not played 60 minutes of football. I think the TCU game was the closest that they did to that. But even in that game, Mitch, afterwards we do a post-game reaction. And in that one, I think I said there were 4, 5, 6 things that you could nitpick about that performance as well. I want to see them trim that down and be able to have a better performance against the Red Raiders tomorrow than they did in their first meeting. But we're up against it. We're going to take a quick timeout. You're listening to Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday, powered by KSL Sports.
You're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship. Brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove. It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Richie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Hope all of you are having a fantastic Friday night. Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland coming to you live from Arlington, Texas, site of the Big 12 Football Championship game. We were trying to get into the stadium, AT&T, earlier today, Kyle, and we go up to pick up our credential, and we said, hey, can we go just check out the field? Because there's a lot of security, and people at the media credential, they're like, It's locked down today. Oh, okay. They said, there was the best part, though, Kyle. They said, hey, you'll be able to get in tomorrow. Oh, I hope so. I'll be able to get in tomorrow. Holy cow.
That was rich.
We come out here from Provo, and I hope I can get in for game day.
That'd be great.
Holy cow. I'm thinking, geez, thanks for the...
Jerry has that thing on walk down.
Oh,
Mitch.
my gosh. We walked anywhere, and we had some guy in an AT&T Stadium suit saying, excuse me, sir, where are you going? But you know what? They maybe don't let us in the stadium, which is fine. I get it. They don't want us heathens around the team doing walkthroughs. Okay, fine. You know what we did, though, to kind of fill the gaps? We've ate a lot of good barbecue, my friend.
Too much.
Our bodies are sluggish.
I don't think I can
eat
eat
barbecue.
another piece of brisket for at least 3 weeks. Maybe
Describe to the people what we've been eating this week.
We've had some. I mean, Texas knows how to, like, everything's bigger in Texas,
yes.
right? And that goes for the barbecue as well.
No
the
question.
Barbecue plates are outstanding. They're fantastic.
What do we have? We had the Holy Trinity today.
Yeah, we had the Trinity platter, and then we had the El Jefe yesterday.
Whew.
I don't know which one I prefer more. We had a little bit more of a Mexican, Tex-Mex kind of style yesterday.
How I put it this way, with yesterday at Hurtado, the El Jefe plate, I couldn't breathe as we left. Because I'm just
heavy.
It was so heavy.
Yeah, we decided to go. we went a little.
Let's be sarcastic.
We were excited about the barbecue and being here in Arlington, so we went with the 6 meat plate yesterday. We trimmed it back. We only did 3 today. I think we made a better choice.
Yes, we absolutely did. And then
feeling good.
Tonight we had a Cougar Tail. We had some Buc-ee's ice cream
Got
too.
some BYU Creamery chocolate milk.
Gracious,
that was fun at the Fan Fest. How they brought the LaVell Edwards Stadium experience all the way to Arlington at the home of the Texas Rangers, Globe Life Field, so the fans could really. It was a cool unification event for the fan base, because I'm sure a bunch of Cougar fans that are here for the game have made the trips from Utah, other places out west, maybe other places around the country. But it was also like local fans, like I forget about that there's local people that aren't intermingling with the fan base that's traditionally at these football games. It's not like just a wave of fans that come here and there. It's like Cougar Nation intertwines at these away events and the road games, and so that was fun to see as well.
Cougar Nation shows up. They always do, and it's one of the great things about this fan base, and they've got the chance to cheer their heart out for this BYU team tomorrow. Kickoff at 10 a.m. inside AT&T Stadium. Hopefully it's not locked down, and hopefully we can see the game. Jeez, I'm like, thanks for that update. We can see it tomorrow. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's get into 3 and Out, where we give you a deep dive look into the matchup, the next contest for BYU football. And we start off the drive with first down, a stat to watch. What say you? What's the stat you're keeping an eye on in this matchup?
The number 1, Mitch. Number 1. That's my stat of the week, and it's not an impressive number, but I thought it was for the first meeting of this season between these two teams. BYU only allowed 1 sack of Bear Bachmeier against Texas Tech there in Lubbock. Lee Hunter ended up having 1 on Bear. And the reason why I point this out is because BYU, there's been a lot that's been made of the way that they went into max protect in that game. They were so cautious about protecting Bear, keeping him upright. But at the same time, they weren't able to run the football because LJ was banged up, and they had lack of confidence in the running back room behind him. Sione Mo is back in this game. Mm-hmm. And then you didn't have the ability to stretch the field. And I think that BYU just needs to kind of break out of that mold. They can't worry about protecting Bear for the sake of losing other parts of the offense. They have to be able to trust that he's going to get the ball out on time. You can't have any fear of this Texas Tech front 7. They're good. They're great. But you can't be fearful about them. And so I think that Bear, that 1 sack, that's awesome. If BYU can limit the amount of pressure and sack and quarterback hurries and hits against him, that's great. But they can't do it with the max protect situation. They have to be able to play their game, play their offense, but keep Bear protected at the same time.
Great pull there for BYU's offense trying to combat that Texas Tech defense. For me, the number is 6.51. That's Texas Tech's average on yards per play this season, 6.51. this veer and shoot offense that Texas Tech incorporates with Mac Leftwich, the offensive coordinator. Remember, if it's a familiar name, he was kind of considered for the Utah offensive coordinator search before he ended up going to Texas Tech. Utah then hired Jason Beck, former BYU quarterback, as their OC. But this Texas Tech offense, it's not glamorous in terms of star power, but they're very effective. And 6.5 yards per play, you've got to keep them well below that. BYU's defense has got to put them in some second and longs. They have to get behind the sticks. Far too often in that game in Lubbock, except for the first couple possessions, it was a lot of second and manageables. And that's where BYU's defense has to be stout, particularly in stopping the run defense. But I just thought that number is pretty significant, where you're getting half the distance in a standard 1st and 10. You're getting more than half of that. If you get in a 2nd and 4, gosh, that's so tough to slow down an offense. So Texas Tech is very good on yards per play. That also speaks to their explosive nature, too, that they can get some big plays. So BYU's defense has got to be on point. Second down, players to watch in the matchup.
Yeah, for BYU, I think that it's Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly, the star linebacker duo there. Jack ended up having 2 sacks in that game against Texas Tech a month ago, and Isaiah added another. Those guys combined for 4 tackles for loss. And I think that besides the leadership that they bring to this team, Mitch, it's their star power on that defense. Those guys are the ones that can make those highlight plays, the fumbles, the interceptions that Glasker's had this season. BYU needs those guys to make those kinds of plays that they've made earlier this year against Texas Tech. You talk about the run defense. I thought that was one of the biggest points that you made after that Texas Tech loss and going into that TCU game, Mitch, was how much you called out BYU's inability to stop the run. And I think that Texas Tech will look to utilize that to their advantage again with Cameron Dickey this week. I just think that BYU has to have utilized the last month or so and this week of prep to really hone in and focus and make that strong. And I think that starts with big performances from that linebacker duo of Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker. And then as far as Texas Tech is concerned, I do think that Texas Tech is going to be able to run the football. I do trust what Cameron Dickey's been able to do. He was really good against BYU, and it wasn't like he had a crazy good game, but he had 101 or 121 yards on the ground and a touchdown. But I do think that you have to try and make this team one-dimensional, and I think that when that happens, I've said it multiple times this season, Jay Hill is excellent when he's able to make an offense one-dimensional. And so I looked at Baron Morton, that quarterback, who has been dealing with that leg injury this season. He didn't look great in the second half to me against BYU, and BYU, I felt like, has been able to get pressure since the Texas Tech game. They were able to get a lot of hurries against UCF. They were in the backfield a ton last week, and they were in on them as well in Lubbock. And so I look at that and I say, hey, can BYU stop and minimize Morton to really make them one-dimensional?
For me, on the Texas Tech side of things, it's the newly named Butkus Award winner, Jacob Rodriguez, linebacker. He won the Butkus Award tonight. He had a season high for tackles in a game this year against BYU, 14 tackles. He had a fumble recovery, he had an interception, generated 2 takeaways. He's all over the place. You got to watch for him, number 10, the star linebacker, who's being publicized by Tech as a Heisman Trophy candidate. And I'll keep it simple with BYU, LJ Martin. I think Martin's got to get around 85 to 100 yards in this game. That's tough because Texas Tech only gives up, as a team, 68.9 rushing yards per game. They are so good. So if LJ alone can get above that mark, that would be huge for BYU. Third down, bold predictions. We'll make this one quick.
Yeah, I also am going to say that it kind of goes with LJ Martin, but also Bear Bachmeier. I think that Bear's going to throw for 250-plus yards in this game. He only had 188 through the air in their first meeting, and then LJ runs for 100-plus. He only had 35 in the first meeting.
For me, it's going to be BYU doesn't commit any turnovers in this game. So I think BYU takes care of the football, and then it just becomes maybe the margins. Can you get a takeaway or two? Because this last meeting against Tech, it was one of only 2 games this year where BYU's defense did not come up with an interception. They've got 16 on the year. Can you get some takeaways? And then that's going to give you a chance to win the turnover margin. You're listening to Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship. Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland, and it's brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove.
You're listening to a special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship. Brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove.
Welcome back into Cougar Sports Saturday, powered by KSLSports.com. It's a Friday edition as we get you prepared for the Big 12 Championship game tomorrow morning, bright and early pregame coverage, and you will hear it live on KSL News Radio as BYU gets ready to rematch against Texas Tech. Mitch, it's a big game, and where do you think? I said that this is the second biggest game in BYU football history. I truly do believe that. Where do you think this game ranks?
It's a great question. I think that this game, to me, probably ranks. It's hard to argue against this one being second behind the national championship. You could point maybe to the WAC championship in 1996. There was the Bowl Alliance bid on the line for that game. BYU was number 6 in the top 25 rankings, and it looked like there was a chance to go to the Fiesta Bowl if they won. Then, of course, shocking, the Bowl Alliance Committee turned down BYU and gave 9-3 Texas a spot. Deja vu? I don't know. But, and then you throw it was against Penn State. It's just all the worlds are colliding again.
Jake Retzlaff will get into the playoff over BYU, and so will Sark. It'll be two former BYU guys.
There's no way Texas is getting in. But, I would probably say it's second. It's just because it's huge. It's a power conference.
Yeah.
It's a game where you know that if you win, you're in. And it's crazy, too, seeing the ESPN playoff predictor, 99.9% chance of getting into the playoff if they win. If they lose tomorrow, 0.8% chance getting into the playoff. So
they can't even give them 100.
They can't even do that for this BYU team. But it's a huge game. So those type of stakes, it's the type of stuff that BYU has been dreaming of for so many years, and I'm really excited to see what they do and how they perform tomorrow in this game.
Yeah, I think that this is a game, Mitch, where based off of the vibes that I've felt this week, when we were back in Provo, when we were seeing the team come into the hotel last night, I think that there's something different about this team. I really do. It's not the same team that was last year's team where they still had a lot in front of them after that Kansas game, and then they, didn't rebound the following week against ASU. This year they rebounded from that Texas Tech loss. This is a better team than the team a season ago. I just don't know if they're good enough to rebound against this Texas Tech team. They are that good, and I think that Joey McGuire is building a power there in Lubbock. I really do believe it. I think that these two teams are going to be powers in the Big 12 for years to come. And it's because of both of those coaches getting contract extensions this week. Both of them happen to both get them the same day. And there's just a lot of parallels between these two programs. I know they're so different when it comes to the religion side of things, cultural, all that kind of stuff. But, these are passionate fan bases that care about their programs.
They are. And coincidentally, Joey McGuire and Kalani Sitake by the same agency group, Athletes First. Kalani's agent's David Dunn, and Joey McGuire, I think it might be the same agent, but it's with Athletes First as well. Safe to say that agency group very thrilled with this week's news for both of those guys getting contract extensions and very lucrative extensions for both of those guys. But, I look at this situation and where it just might be a bad matchup, too, for BYU, where BYU's strength is running the football. That's their bread and butter with L.J. Martin. Well, Texas Tech's bread and butter is stopping the run. And Bear Bachmeier is more than enough capable of passing the football, as we saw last week against UCF and as we've seen in games this year where he's passed for 300 yards. But this is a defense that generates so much pressure. And I'm really curious to see how BYU's offensive line performs against the Texas Tech defensive front this time around. Because I remember in Lubbock, from the opening snap, David Bailey was causing havoc. Just everywhere. Instantly. Even if he didn't have any sacks, his footsteps were everywhere, and Bear was hearing those footsteps consistently. He was always in the area looking to make a play. Same with Romello Height, same with Lee Hunter, and, of course, Jacob Rodriguez. And then they've got a pretty good secondary, too, and that was kind of viewed as a question mark for this defense. They were a locked-down group against BYU's receivers. So, I really want to see BYU's offensive line give some time to Bear. Hopefully he doesn't have to take many sacks, but it wouldn't shock me if there's a couple sacks in this game. But just be aggressive. Do not be the conservative BYU that we saw against Texas Tech the last time. I think one of the great plays in that game was a little bit of a trick spot, a special, as they call them, where it was dialed up for Carson Ryan. You got to see some of that and execute some of these specials that BYU practices a lot. Dig into the bag and pull out all the stops to go win this game at all cost.
Yeah, Texas Tech, their offense, they're good. They're the number one scoring offense in the country, in the
Big 12
conference, and they were snubbed on the Big 12 first team offense list. No recognition there. And so I wonder how much motivation that will be for them when they're going against the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year and LJ Martin and just kind of the battle there. I will say, Mitch, I've picked BYU to win every single game this season. And I was wrong once, and it was that game in Lubbock. I'm going to try not to be wrong this week. And so because of that, I'm going to say Texas Tech ends up winning this game. I do think that they're the better football team. And BYU, I just think, like you said, it's a bad matchup. The way that BYU wins this game is if Bear plays lights out and has the best game of his season so far, and LJ Martin puts out an excellent performance at the same time. If that happens, BYU can win this game. I just think it's a lot to ask, given the stage, given everything that's kind of stacked against BYU as far as like that defense and that front seven in particular. And so I think Texas Tech ends up winning this game 38-28. It's a better showing from BYU, but Texas Tech, just a little too much.
It's really hard to take down top four teams when all things are equal. It's even more difficult when you're viewed as a 2-touchdown underdog. And I know that doesn't play a role into the game, but it just maybe highlights the matchup, the style of play, and just how BYU strengths really play into Texas Tech's strengths. I think BYU's got to get creative with the play calling, and I think their defense has to erase Texas Tech's rushing offense with Dickey and Jacoby Williams. They have to. They have to bring them to a standstill. They cannot have success as much as they did last time in Lubbock. Like you, I'm going to go with Tech, but I have a caveat that I think BYU fans are going to come away from this game feeling very good about how their group played. Like, I don't think it's going to be a game where it's like, my gosh, you guys no-showed. No, they're going to show up. They're going to play physical. They're going to go blow for blow with Tech for a full 60 minutes, but I think ultimately Texas Tech comes out on top. I think Texas Tech wins 23-17 and gets it done. But that's going to do it for this special edition of Cougar Sports Saturday on a Friday. BYU in the Big 12 Championship, brought to you by BMW of Pleasant Grove. We will see you tomorrow. Full coverage on KSLSports.com, and listen to the game right here on KSL News Radio. Good night, everyone.